Good morning. Welcome into our conservatory. We are eating with Emerson this morning. We're going to be learning all about our giant Galapagos tortoise from his keeper, Hannah. And so get in here, join us, guys. We will give a few shout outs as y'all get settled in, and then we will continue eating with Emerson. All right, let's see who's joining us here this morning. As we said, we are in what's called Zeem's Conservatory, and we are hanging with Emerson, our Galapagos tortoise. Hey, Colton, Cassidy, and Isabel. Good morning, Max. Hey, Kyler. Hi, Tony. Good morning, Sam, Charlotte, Amelia, and Emmy. Thanks for tuning in. All right, guys. Good morning, Lauren. Hi, Connie and Link. Good morning, Blair and Jalen. Thanks for joining us. Hi, Theo, William, and Marcus. Good morning, Gavin and Grayson. Hey, Aubrey and Braden. Good morning, Jan. She says, oh, good morning, Emerson. Look at him just showing off for the camera. Look at that. Hi, Layla. Hi, Allison and Abby. Hi, Sierra and Kaylee. Oh, Carissa ordered her Quarantine Crew Zoo shirt. That's awesome. You've got till tomorrow to get those orders in. Hey, Annabelle and Caleb. Hi, Brian. All right, guys, we are going to go ahead and get started here. Corey and I are dancing around. We are in Zeem's Conservatory going to talk all about Emerson today. But of course, we want to run through some quick announcements. Thank you to everyone who took part in our animal art auction. It has ended. We raised a great amount of money, so thank you so very much. If you did not win one of those but would still like some animal art, go to toledozoo.org/donate and click on the animal art masterpieces. We have a few pieces left from last year's Wild About Art, done by some of our baby Galapagos tortoises, our southern tamandua, our elephants. You guys can check all those out there. And of course, today is a meal on the go day. Last day to enjoy lasagna and barbecue chicken breasts with scalloped potatoes. Get those orders in before 1 o'clock at toledozoo.org/mealsonthego. And Saturday night is date night for our troop trivia. If you haven't signed up for that, go to toledozoo.org/virtual trivia. All right, guys, as always, we don't know yet when we are going to be able to reopen. But as soon as we do know anything, we will let you guys know here on our social and on our website. Until then, keep helping to support us by going to toledozoo.org/donate or hitting the donate button here on our live feeds. And just so you guys know, we will be taking Monday off for Memorial Day, but we will have a cool video for you to look forward to during our normal time. All right, Hannah, doing some neck scratching down here. Tell us about Emerson here.
So Emerson's been here just about as long as I have. I think he came here a month before I did. I've been here about 5.5 years. So I think it'll be 6 years for him in August. He came from the San Diego Zoo. And when he lived at San Diego Zoo, there was quite a few other tortoises there. I think they've had up to 22 at a time. And if you look at the back of his shell, if you've ever seen him before, he has 2 number 30s on the back of his shell. Can't see him very well anymore because they kind of scratched off. Those were identification markers since there were so many tortoises there. All of the male tortoises had white numbers and the females had red ones, so they were easy to tell apart. We don't really use that here since he's our only large one that we have. So yeah, he's been here about 6 years. Before that, I believe he lived at St. Louis Zoo. And then before that, he came from the wild. So Emerson came to the United States in the 1920s with a scientist named Charles Townsend. And he went over to the Galapagos Islands to collect these tortoises at smaller sizes to keep them from going extinct. So unfortunately for these guys, they're a great source of food. On ships, so primarily when people use ships as a means of getting around, they would take these tortoises from the Galapagos Islands and keep them on their ships and use them for food. Galapagos tortoises can go about a year without drinking water, so you don't have to provide them with fresh water or anything like that if you're on a voyage. So that's one of the reasons why they made an excellent food source for the sailors on those ships. And then another thing that happened with them is animals like rats being introduced over in the Galapagos Islands, because naturally these animals don't have natural predators, especially at this size. But when they lay eggs, they don't really have a defense, and animals like rats can take them and eat them before they even hatch. He sees that bucket there.
Absolutely. All right, we're getting some questions here.
All right.
Mainly, how big is he and how much does he weigh?
So we typically only weigh him twice a year when we move him inside and outside for the summer season. I think the last time we weighed him, he was about 420 pounds. He ranges anywhere from there to 450. So it changes each time we weigh him, but that's generally, between 425 and 450 is what he normally weighs.
And how big is his shell?
I've never actually measured it myself.
He's just going to help himself.
We're going to have a lot of that. I don't know. I'd say it's 3.5, 4 feet long, maybe.
Yeah.
Because I'm about 5.5 feet, so.
Very cool. And we don't know exactly how old he is because, as you mentioned, he did come from the wild.
Yep.
But what's our best guess?
He's at least 100 years old. I know that expedition happened in the late 1920s. And he was at least a couple years old when he was brought over. He was probably anywhere between, I'd say 10 and 20 pounds when he was brought over. I did get to see photos of some of the tortoises that he brought over. I don't know if I actually saw a photo of Emerson himself, but they look to be, handheld size, easily movable.
All right. We're getting some more questions here. Izzy and Emmy would like to know, how long is his neck? We're seeing him stretch it out and pull it in here, but...
I'm not sure exactly how long his neck is, but I did do a little experiment with him last summer to see how far he can stretch his neck out of those posts over there. And I think it was about 15 inches that he could stretch his neck all the way out. So then we knew how far to keep the fence away, so people can't get bit by him or anything. He's not a malicious animal, but you can see as I'm feeding him, if he mistakes anything for food, he's going to try to bite it.
Absolutely. And he's getting some good crunching there.
Yeah.
How sharp are his teeth and bite
So
here?
he doesn't have teeth, but you can see his beak here. We call it a beak, just like you would for a bird. See if I can get him to open up real good. He does have like serrated parts inside of his beak. They kind of look like teeth, but they're not. And he uses that to crunch down on stuff. He can bite through a watermelon rind pretty easily.
Oh, goodness, yes.
So I have to be careful when I'm hand feeding him so that I don't get bit. Luckily for me, he's pretty slow.
True statement.
But he is like a bulldozer. He'll corner me if he wants his food. And usually I don't give him this much treat. These are considered treats, but since today is a special occasion for him,
yeah, this is his day to be a star.
And if you're standing in here, you got to keep him occupied. Otherwise, he'll just keep following you around.
And that leads right into Allison's question of what is his favorite snack?
Probably watermelon. He likes carrots. He likes hibiscus flowers. Anything brightly colored. So he does see color. I'm not sure to what degree, but he does respond to red and orange very well. So usually if we really need to move him somewhere, we'll use the watermelon and the carrot. I mean, he likes his greens and his celery too, but the bright colors are really what attracts him.
All right. And Ashton asks, what enrichment activities do you do with Emerson?
So anytime we do enrichment with him, we usually have to supervise it because, like I said, he'll try to eat pretty much anything. I do have a pole over there. I don't know if you can see it very well. It's attached to that fencing around that tree. I can dangle food from that so that he can stretch out to grab it. We'll use things like boomer balls with holes cut in them, and we'll put food inside of it, and he'll, kind of roll it around. Usually you have to help him. And I've done that with the young ones as well. just for them to kind of forage and look for stuff.
And as Hannah just mentioned, we do have 3 young Galapagos tortoises. We've talked, Emerson is well over 100 years old. We don't know his exact age because he did come from the wild, but we do also have 3, they're not babies anymore. They were babies when Hannah and I started here. And in fact, I remember seeing them and they were about the size of a softball when I first started. And how much do they weigh now, Hannah?
The largest one is 24 pounds, and then the 2 smaller ones that are a year younger are 16 and 17 pounds.
My goodness. So we will check those guys out, or those ladies out too, in a little bit here. Layla asks, how long do Galapagos tortoises live?
Their average lifespan usually runs between 150 to 200 years.
Wow.
So he's still, he'll probably still be here when I retire.
That's amazing. And Sophia from New Jersey asks if he can swim.
So these guys don't swim, but they do have the ability to float. And that's beneficial for them because they do live in the Galapagos Islands. Flooding can happen. And, in the worst case scenario, if it floods bad enough where they end up in the water, they'll just float to the next island.
Wow, that's very cool, especially with their giant size and weight that they can float. And Jonah wants to know, how much do they eat?
I don't measure his food out every day, but I do kind of have a standard. So he has a bowl over there that has Timothy hay, and we basically let him have unlimited Timothy hay. It's not his favorite. It's kind of like the equivalent of giving kids their vegetables. It's the healthiest option, but not necessarily his favorite. So we get this delivered. You gonna eat some of that? Oh, he proved me wrong. He's gonna eat some. So I'll keep that bowl filled with the Timothy hay, so he has access to that all of the time. And then 3 times a day we supplement with greens. We'll give him a little bit of watermelon. I don't really give the young ones watermelon. The reason why we give him so much watermelon is because we want to keep his fluid intake up. So he's a little bit spoiled. And then we give him a couple carrots throughout the week. I'll cut a few pieces off and just kind of sprinkle them on top. And then he'll also get celery. Celery, doesn't have a high calorie content. It's got water in it. And we do keep a water bowl in here, but he mostly spills it rather than drinks it, which is fine. Like I said, they can go up to a year without drinking water as an adult. But we still, provide him with fresh water every day.
And Alex wants to know, will he get any bigger?
If he does, it probably won't be super noticeable. I mean, being 100 years old, he's pretty much full size. Males generally tend to get larger than females. I mean, they can get up to 600 pounds. I'm sure if I fed him more, he'd probably gain weight, but I don't know that his shell would necessarily grow.
All right, and that leads into the numbers on the back of his shell. You said it said 30-30 at one point. And tell us again what those meant.
Those were just easy identifiers for the herd of tortoises at San Diego. I think at one point they had up to 22 tortoises. And while they do have distinct facial features and shell shapes, when you have that many tortoises and you need to make a quick decision about who's who, it's nice to just have a marker. I do have marks just on the 3 that I have over there as well, so that I can tell them apart, because the 2 smaller ones are pretty close in size.
Yeah.
And when they're small like that, they generally look pretty similar. As they age, their shell shape will change a little bit. Their facial features look a little bit different. So it'll be easier to tell them apart probably when they're grown up a little bit more.
And Lucas wants to know if all turtles have different, or tortoises, have different designs on their shells.
Yeah, they do. So there's 3 main types of shells with Galapagos tortoises, and then it kind of branches off from there. So I would consider Emerson to be like an intermediate to a saddleback. There's also one called a domed shell. Domed shells look like a dome, and those are generally the tortoises that live on the islands that have a lot of grasses. So they're grazing, on the ground. They don't have to stand up and stretch their necks out to eat. Intermediates, kind of somewhere in between. They can go either way. And then the saddleback shell kind of turns up, and his does a little bit, up by the neck. That way, if they're living on islands that have more vegetation growing on trees and they have to stretch their necks out to be able to get it, they're able to do so. So that kind of depends on what islands they come from. But yeah, the little patterns on his shell are called scutes or scoots. And they kind of just change as they grow. It really is dependent on their diet, how much UV light they're getting, humidity. At this stage in his life, it's probably not going to change much. You probably do notice all of the little yellowish spots on the back of his shell. And those are all just dings that he's gotten, throughout his life. They did have patches on them when he first came here, but we took them off because we figured it was probably healed up enough, get some airflow to it. There's one right here where he kept catching it on stuff. So that's pretty much, the main thing that we have to look out for as far as care goes with them, because like I said, he's like a bulldozer. If he wants to run into a wall or, knock something over, he's going to. So we just have to, make sure we provide an environment where he can't really get stuck or anything like that. But when you're 100 plus years old, you're going to get some injuries on you over time. So.
Absolutely. And Brendan and Lucas want to know how strong his shell is.
It's pretty strong. They have, feeling in their shell. If I scratch his shell, he can feel it. Occasionally I will use a brush to scrub it off, when he's living inside because he's not getting any rain on him. Usually I just leave him go when he's outside. It's pretty strong. I probably could sit on him. I wouldn't. But I know we used to do tortoise rides back in the day when we had jalopy. So it is strong enough to support a person, but it's on the inside of their shell, it's kind of like a spongy, marrowy material. So it's not completely, hard all the way through. So, we don't put pressure on it if we don't have to. The most I do is just kind of scrub it and, if he doesn't like it, then I'll leave him alone. But most of the time he likes having his shell scrubbed.
And does he like to be petted?
He does. He loves to be scratched. I'll see if he'll let me, of course, now that I've got all this food here. Will you let me scratch you? So normally if it's just me in here in the morning, all I have to do is kneel down like this and he will stand up. And this is called a finch response or a finch pose. And if you've heard of Galapagos finches, which Charles Darwin studied a lot, it's kind of a symbiotic relationship between the tortoises and the finches. So normally in the wild, they'll have like ticks, different bugs, maybe pieces of vegetation that they were eating, and the finches will land on their necks and pick all that stuff off, and it feels good. It's getting them get off their neck, and so it's kind of the same thing when I scratch him. Typically, I don't find anything on his neck when I'm in here, but.
And what does his skin feel like?
It's really, really rough and dry.
And Sherry asked, do you put any oil or skin conditioner on him?
We don't. Sometimes he'll have like dry skin on his neck that I'll pick off a little bit, but he doesn't really need the moisturizer. It's pretty normal for them.
He does seem to really be enjoying this. Look at that look on his face.
And it's good for us because then if, the underside of their shell is called their plastron. And, with a 450-pound tortoise, it's not easy to just tip him over and look under it. I do that with the babies where I'll just pick him up and flip him over, get a good look at him. I do it about once a week just to make sure everything looks okay. With him, it's not so easy. So if I have somebody else in here, I'll stand here and scratch him, and then somebody can look underneath there and make sure that his plastron looks okay. Because it can get pretty worn, sitting down on stuff. In the wild, they'll live like in rocky areas and they'll climb rocks and stuff, and it can get scraped up more so than the carapace, which is the top part of the shell. So
his face is just so great. He's just like, that feels so good.
So yeah, it's nice that we can do this with him.
Definitely.
Because then, if we have to, he gets an annual checkup with the vet staff. So just to make sure everything looks good. And this is one of the things that we do.
Very cool. And Emmy asks, what type of degree do you need to work with turtles and tortoises?
So I have a bachelor's degree in biological sciences. I graduated from Bowling Green State University. Most zookeepers have some sort of science related, whether it's environmental science or just biology or, even chemistry. Usually a sciences related degree.
Okay. And Mike asks, does Emerson have a tail?
He does have a tail, and normally he tucks it in. I don't know why, and his tail is probably one of the strongest parts of his body. So we do try to get blood draws on him occasionally just to get, a baseline to make sure everything is good. And it's really difficult to get a blood draw on a tortoise this size.
I can imagine. We've
tried the neck and we've tried the tail, and the tail is the only one that we've been successful with. But you have to do it really quick, and it's vet staff that does it. And yeah, that tail is strong.
Charlotte, age 5, wants to know, why is he so wrinkly?
That's a good question. Probably just because his skin is so dry. I mean, there's no moisture to it.
And it's old skin,
and it helps protect him, I have like tissue paper skin. It's a running joke for us. So, I get poked by a lot of stuff, but I also live inside a house. If he lived in the wild, he could be living in rocky areas, climbing over top of stuff. He's got them big, strong nails on his feet as well. So he's not going to get cuts as easily, as people would.
Tough, huh?
Yeah.
And Sue asks, can he pull into his shell all the way?
He can pull in pretty far, but he can't close the shell like a box turtle would be able to. He can't pull his legs in very far, but he can, if he gets upset, he'll tuck his head in pretty far.
All right. And Morgan asks, have you ever had a tortoise try to escape?
I mean, he's tried to get in the corners and stuff and climb up. We had to kind of modify this enclosure a little bit so that wouldn't happen because we didn't want him getting stuck, but we've never had him escape. In fact, when we move him outside, we used to move him on a skateboard thing.
Yep.
And that turned out to be a little bit stressful for him because he wouldn't stay on it. He would come forward a little bit. Now we're just to the point where we just let him walk.
Yeah,
so
and we don't really have to worry about him going too fast.
No, it takes about a half an hour. We plan out for it. We typically do it before the zoo opens on a nice day. And we'll just take those posts out, we'll open that, try to get a weight on him in the flat area, and then we just let him walk. So if you consider that escaping, he gets to walk out in the gardens and stuff, but.
And Layla asks, are they endangered?
I think they're considered threatened. And there's different subspecies of Galapagos tortoises. Some people get confused and they think that, I don't know if you're familiar with Lonesome George, the Galapagos tortoise. He was one subspecies, and subspecies, just relate to what island they're found on. So how I was talking about their shell shapes and stuff, that can be an indicator of what subspecies there are. I think there was 15 total subspecies noted, and there's only 10 that are still alive today.
Wow.
So some of them are extinct. And Emerson is Chilenoidus darwinii, and supposedly there's only 2 males left of that subspecies, but I can't verify that. It's hard to know these things, especially, when you don't know how many there are in the wild still.
Sure. Yeah. Kyler, age 6, wants to know, does he always eat this messy, and do you ever clean off his face?
He always eats this messy. In fact, he'll get watermelon juice all over me when I'm in here. I usually don't clean his face off unless he has something in his nostrils. Occasionally he'll get a piece of hay up there, which is kind of horrifying. He hates having his nose messed with, so that's always fun to deal with. But for the most part, it comes off on its own, especially if he goes to take a drink, it'll rinse off.
Sure. And we're getting quite a few questions. Has he ever bit your fingers?
He has not bitten my fingers before. I'm really careful about feeding him. Usually if I get down to a small piece of food, I'll just throw it in his bowl so I don't have to get too close to him.
Absolutely. And Parker, age 7, asks, does he stink?
He really doesn't stink. He does have very large poops. They're mostly comprised of hay. So it kind of just has that sweet, it kind of smells like horse poop, I think.
Yeah, I can understand that.
But he doesn't have any odors on his body. He doesn't have sweat glands since he's a reptile, so, he has no reason to stink unless something gets on him.
And Kimmy wants to know, do you clip his nails?
We don't clip his nails. We do, watch them to make sure that they're shaped in the way that we want them to. They can be a good indicator, if he's walking properly. So you'll notice that, he's standing up and supporting his body weight, and that's really good. That lets us know that he's a healthy tortoise. So as long as he's walking like that and supporting his body weight, his nails are going to naturally wear down to where they need to be. So we really don't have to worry about those. We have used a Dremel on his beak before. So his beak continues to grow, and it is kind of jagged right now. There for a while, he had a really long piece that snapped off when I fed him a carrot. So we were kind of trying to shape that down a little bit so that it would be more even, but he hates the Dremel. So that was really tricky to do. In fact, he bit one of the bits off.
Oh, goodness.
But it snapped the piece off that we needed to come off, so it worked out.
It all worked, yep. While she continues to feed that, Cor, can you get a view of our baby Galapagoses? Galapagi?
We just call them galops.
Okay, that works for me. Well, I don't know, we'll see if we have some time here, but we want to make sure that we can get in all of your questions. But we want to introduce you guys to our 3 ladies, too. Hannah, tell us who we have over there.
So we've got 3 young Galapagos tortoises over there. They're no relation to Emerson. They came from the Gladys Porter Zoo down in Texas. I want to say we've had them about 4 years. I think they came here about a year after Emerson did. And they are going to be 7 and 8 years old. So there's one sibling that's a year older than the other 2. I have given them names. I named them after some of my favorite maternal figures in my life. We've got Candace Marie, Beverly Kay, and Cleo Juanita over there.
All right. And these were the ones I was saying when I started here, they were about the size of a softball.
Yeah.
And I actually got to hold one when I first started with Val in the reptile house. And she told me 2 things were important at that point when I was meeting them and got to hold one. She said, hold it up and out. They like to see where they're going, and they also would pee on me. So 2 important lessons I've kept with me all this time. But Hannah said they are, as she said, about 7 and 8 years old and 18 to 24 pounds-ish.
Yeah, yep.
And they do have their own little area over here, and we're excited to watch them grow some more. Do you hand feed them also?
I try to establish a relationship with them because with Emerson, he came here as an adult. He's used to interacting with people. He's a very food motivated animal. So, our relationship is pretty close. I can get him to move around. He'd follow me around in circles all day if I let him. With them, it's a little bit different. I call them little zombies because they basically just walk after you and attack your shoes because their sole purpose is eat, eat, eat.
Yes.
So they don't really have a relationship with me in the same way that Emerson does. If I go in there and kneel down to try to scratch them, it's not going to happen. I have been working with them a little bit. If I'm standing on the outside of the fencing, they'll let me reach in and scratch them. They'll do the finch response just like Emerson does. But, they're younger and they're still a little bit wary. I'm larger than them, whereas I'm smaller than Emerson. So, he doesn't really see me as a threat.
Yep. And what are you feeding him now?
I'm not good with my greens.
Some sort of leafy green. Yep, some sort of leafy green.
They came from the commissary.
And let's see. Looking for some questions here. All right, guys, you guys are all asking about how old he is, and unfortunately, that's the one thing we really don't have an answer to. He did come from the wild. We know he's somewhere over 100 years old, but he has been here for about 6 years. Ella wants to know, when he bangs his shell, does it hurt him?
Probably not as much as it would hurt a human. Like I said, it is a hard shell. It's made of bone. So, It just depends on how hard he hits it and how deep it is. I don't know how he acquired these. These were all, ones that he got before he came here. He does like to run into the fence sometimes and, hit that. If he is in pain, he will emit a bellow. They do vocalize from time to time, which I've only ever heard him do when he's mad that I'm not in there feeding him. So sometimes I'll come in and I'll service the baby tortoises first, and if he knows I'm in there, he'll pace the front, he'll get stuck in the corner, sometimes he'll bellow. They're spoiled tortoises.
And we're getting a question of how does he sleep?
He basically just sprawls out. So that back corner over there where we started has a heat pad. You can't really see it because it's covered by the sand, but there's a flat cement slab that's probably about 6 or 7 feet long. And then there is an overhead heater. There's an overhead UV light fixture. So he likes the warm area. It's usually about, like right now it's 85 degrees ambient temperature in here. So it'll get up above 90 over there, which is, they like to bask, in temperatures up to 100 degrees. So he'll sprawl out, usually at the end of the day, when the sun starts going down. They're pretty active during the day, but he'll just kind of sprawl out, rest his shell down. He'll lay his head on the ground.
Oh, that sounds so cute. Shannon asked, could Emerson and the other baby galops interact?
Probably not, at least not for another 10 to 20 years, probably.
They're pretty small.
Yeah, their growth rate is really slow, and especially with females, they don't get as large as males. So it would take them quite a while to catch up to him. And one little known thing about Emerson is that when he lived at San Diego, he was kind of a bully.
Oh.
So I think that's one of the reasons why he came here, is because he does well on his own. That is a question that we get a lot. Does he need a companion? Is he lonely? And he seems to do just fine on his own. I mentioned earlier that he's really food motivated, so he does steal food from other tortoises. That was a problem that they had there. So he's like an only child now, and he gets all the food he wants.
Aww. All right, guys, we are rounding down on the questions here, but let's talk about, does he have any children? Has he mated in the past?
I don't think he does. I haven't found any record of it in our Sims program. I don't know how often they tried. And so, like I said, supposedly there's only 2 of his subspecies which are both male, at least in captivity. And there are, sets of rules as far as how to go about breeding with tortoises. I don't know if they want hybridization. He very well could, try to breed with a female tortoise, but it wouldn't be his same subspecies. And I don't know if they want,
Sure, that's understandable.
hybridization. So the females that we have over there are a subspecies called microphes, and that's one of the more commonly kept one in zoos. It's probably the highest populated subspecies that we have, so they're not as threatened as what his subspecies would be. And one thing I didn't mention about babies and eggs, so generally Galapagos tortoises lay, I don't know, probably around 15 eggs. It can be a little less, a little bit more. And one cool thing about their eggs is the temperature that you incubate them at will determine whether they're males or females. So even though the females over there aren't mature enough for us to actually know that they're females, they were incubated at a higher temperature, which usually produces females. And then if you want males, you do it at a lower temperature. And then that way, you can, if you want 50-50, you can just do it half and half, and then you'll get half boys, half girls. So we're pretty sure that they're females. But we'll probably confirm that, as they mature. Usually they are not mature until they're in their 20s.
Oh, wow. So we've got a while yet. And Jenna asks, what's the best time of day to come see the tortoises?
Usually midday. I mean, it can get pretty warm in here. But if the sun's shining, they're going to be a little bit more active. Now, Emerson will be going outside. We try to put him out around Memorial Day. It's looking like it's probably not going to be warm enough quite then.
And what
but
is
probably
the
into
temperature
June.
guideline?
We really look at the nighttime temperature. So we like the nighttime temperatures to be consistently in the 50s because he does stay out. We don't bring him inside every single night. He has a hut out there that I'll hang that heater in there. So he does have supplemental heat, but it's got to be at least consistently in the 50s at night. That way, you know, it's not getting too cold, because if he gets too cold, he'll slow down, he'll stop eating, you know, and we don't want that. So yeah, usually once it's, you know, 70s and 80s during the day, and really any time of day is good to visit him outside, as long as it's not raining. Usually he'll go hide in his hut when it's raining, but if it's sunny out, he'll be standing in his mud wallow out there.
All right, we've got 2 last questions here. The first one is, Hannah, do you work with any other animals or just Emerson and the babies?
I work in the reptile house primarily, so my routine consists of cleaning exhibits in the reptile house. I take care of, let's see, who do I got over there? The reticulated python, the green anaconda. I've got rattlesnakes over there, spitting cobras. What else do I have? Gaboon vipers, couple of different lizards, monkey-tailed skinks, black-tailed crebo. That's one of my favorite snakes that we have. And then some of the off-display areas that we have, I've got, you know, venomous snakes in there. I take care of a few salamanders that are off display. So we have a pretty full day. You know, I'll come over here in the morning, check everything, clean them up, give them food, and then I'll come down at the end of the day and do the same thing, turn their lights off, make sure temperatures are good, that kind of thing. So I kind of go all the way, you know, all around. And we also do swing keeping, where we take care of other people's sections when they're off. So like today, I'll be taking care of the leaf cutter exhibit as well.
Cool.
So every day is different.
All right, and our last question is one that we always like to ask. What is your favorite part of being a keeper?
Just being able to interact with the animals. Emerson is definitely my favorite animal that I take care of. And with reptiles, you know, it can be a little trickier, you know, to develop relationships. But with him, you know, he definitely responds to me. I would like to think that he recognizes me. He definitely does have favorite people and least favorite people. Sure. There are some people that he won't respond as well to. He does like our one gardener that comes in here when he waters plants. He'll let him scratch him as well, you know, because he's used to seeing him. So it is nice to be able to come over here and interact with him. And, you know, it's quiet in the morning, and, you know, I get to see all the plants when I walk through here, especially in the middle of winter time, you know, just hanging out with him. So, yeah.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, we hope that you enjoyed this chance to get to know Emerson, our giant Galapagos tortoise. And he is still inside in Zeem's conservatory right now, but hopefully, as Hannah said, as the weather warms up, and especially as our nights get warmer, we'll be moving him out to Galapagos Gardens, which is along the garden path between the kind of the rose garden area and as you're going back to great apes. So you guys can stop and see him on your next zoo visit. As we said, we don't know quite yet when we're going to reopen, but as soon as we know details, we will let you guys know on here, on our website, and all over our social. Thanks so much for joining us. Hannah, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
For feeding him and telling us all about him. And we look forward to seeing you guys again tomorrow.